passage that I'd like to go over today is one of my favorite passages because it is very much part of the story of my life, which I'm going to tell you, and it's not going to be pretty. I'm not going to lie. I have really not fun in the past, and I was not always a good person. But the story is the parable of the prodigal son. And I'm just going to summarize it for you for the most part. The story goes that Jesus had come across a group of Pharisees who were the moral religious leaders of the time. Now, the Pharisees thought that they were the bee's knees. They were upholding God's written law, which is the Ten Commandments. They did not commit adultery. They did not worship other gods. They did not indulge. They were good people. And this group of Pharisees, they met with Jesus, and on the other side, Jesus had a group of people that he was hanging out with. And by the Pharisees, they were considered to be the religiously immoral, the people who, like, they had prostitutes, liars, tax collectors, which was a bad thing at the time, kind of like you might say lawyers today. They had tax collectors, and just all manner of people. And Jesus was talking with them, and the Pharisees came up to him and they were upset with him. They're like, how can you be with these people? They're so immoral. And Jesus spoke with the religious leaders, and he told them 3 parables. But the one that I'm going over is the prodigal son. Now, when Jesus starts laying out the parable of the prodigal son, it starts like this. There's a father, and he had 2 sons, a younger son and an older son. Let me pick up. Yes. The younger said to his father, "Give me the share of property that is coming to me." And the father divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into the far country. And there he had squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed his pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long ways off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quickly bring the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and the shoes on his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let's eat and celebrate. For my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." Now, I am literally a younger brother, but as far as this parable is concerned, I am a younger brother myself. The problem comes with the younger brother because when he says to his father, "Give me my inheritance," now, we have assets today, liquid assets. We can sell things and we can just give chunks of money. Back then it wasn't that simple. You couldn't just say, "Here's a chunk of money, your inheritance, go off." It would have been a public affair because their inheritance was land and property, which also doubled as someone's personal livelihood because they made a living off of the land. Land was something that was very sacred. Where you were in the land was your home. It wasn't like moving around the country. So when the son said to his father, "I want my inheritance," it would have been a public event. It would have been disgraceful for the father. And at the custom of the time, the father would have been expected to beat him senseless and excommunicate him from the family, because the title of son was not something that was a born right. It was, you were born into it, but it wasn't something that it was your right. It was something that was ascribed to you. So you could literally stop becoming a son and not be related to the family. So the son said to the father, "I want my inheritance," which means he didn't want the father, he wanted the father's stuff. It's as if he said to the father, "I wish you were dead." Now, the first time I've heard this parable, I've heard it 1,000 times, but I recently did a study on it, and I had never heard that before. And this was a public event. He publicly spat in his father's face, pretty much, and said, "I wish you were dead." Now, the way this relates to my life is I had a similar experience. When I was a child, I quickly learned about the pleasures of the world in sexual gratification, and I explored many, many different paths. And I, for a long time, lived as a homosexual, and I just wanted to seek pleasure because I was a hurting kid. I was very messed up. I was very sad. And at one point, I had become involved with another boy my age, and he asked me, he said, "Are you all right with this? Are you sure?" And I told him, I thought about it long enough for a second, and I told him yes. But the split second I thought about it long enough to enjoy the fact that I would be hurting God, because I felt everything in my life that had gone wrong was because of him. Because my brother would hit me sometimes. He was a very angry child. He would beat up on me, not too bad, but like bruise my shoulder. My father just was very estranged from the family, and I was angry to God. I was pissed. I was livid. I wanted God dead. And that was me saying to God, "I want my inheritance, what is rightfully mine." And I ended up getting it. And as the parable goes, the son went off to a foreign land, he squandered his inheritance, and then a famine arose, and he had nothing. And I soon found out what nothing was. I went on for years trying to get happiness in my life, trying to get the inheritance, which I deserved. I was spending it where I could. I was trying to be happy because I thought it was my right. And I didn't care about my father at all. I didn't. And then I came to a point where I had nothing left. I was very broken. I had suicidal thoughts. I was very, very much a broken person. And nobody knew because I hid it very well. And I couldn't get anything else in my life. There was no